What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here today, and we're showing up an updated Nightrose deck profile for the month of November. Honestly, I'm really excited because I actually have the real cards now, plus with SPs. So there are some things that I learned from Nightrose Navigator and also pure Nightrose, and I kind of put everything together, and I'll talk about a little bit about that too, and show off some SPs at the same time. So let's get right into it. For the deck concept, the big picture, honestly, I just took both Nightrose Navigator and Nightrose Pure and took all the pros into both of them into one deck. I realized that, I first started out playing aggressively with the Navigators, so we are playing a bunch of Navigators. That helps accelerate our drop zone count and, of course, have access to our pieces as soon as possible. As soon as grade 2, grade 3 turn, and then maybe even first stride, really have that powerhouse turn, not only just because Skull Dragon's bigger, but we just have a better turn when we have all our pieces or most of our pieces in the drop already. So Obadiah can just get the rest of the cards that we need, and we're pretty much good to go for the rest of the game. Now, with the support for Nightrose, because we have the Nightrose name, I went the pure route, and so with that, cards like Fatal Shade and the old school Negerbone G, it honestly produced a way that you can kind of chain an attack to get an extra Skull Dragon in any of your strike turns. And so what I mean by that is that, when you can, let's say on an Obadiah turn, right? And so you can call 2 Skull Dragons with one of them boosted with the Negerbone. That 2 Skull Dragon attacks will go through, and then the second one will be boosted by the G Negerbone. Pop it to call a Nightstorm. Nightstorm can then call a Skull Dragon to get a 3rd Skull Dragon attack on an Obadiah turn. And so with that, I explained with that in the Pure Rose, and I got myself thinking, I'm like, this is something that honestly you could just put a Negerbone Gene in any deck. If you're already playing 3 of the new V Era Negerbone, then at that point, why not stick in a Negerbone G to kind of have that option open? Because we're already playing Nightstorm, we're already playing Skull Dragon, we're playing already Ghost Ship too if you want to get that advantage. And so I just really mashed everything together, and honestly, it just kind of gives you a solid deck that can go first or second, and I'll explain a little bit that in the combo plays too. Onto the grade 3s. We are playing 8 grade 3s, so we are playing 4 of the new Nightrose, 3 Skull Dragon only, and then 1 Nightstorm. With Nightrose, let's get rid of the basics. So really, it's the Nightrose name, has power to give 5k to every rear guards. Not only that, it's able to retire them so we can access them during the battle phase, so we can call them if we only had access to 1 copy at that point. The second one, of course, when it attacks, Counter Blast 1, choose a column, call up to 2, and then if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, then they get plus 10k onto the end of the battle, which is really good. So with that, during the strike turns, is really good with Bat Bounty, and then it has the Nightrose name, so if you're an Obadiah, you can use Nightrose support, Now, I guess the main topic is like, why am I playing 3 Skull Dragons? Usually it's the 4 staples, especially with the Megiddo turn. It typically thrives on the 4 Skull Dragons with the 1 Nightstorm. Nightstorm, again, at the end of the battle, kind of blast 1, call something, so it can revive a Skull Dragon, where Skull Dragons are beater, right? 2k for every card in the drop zone. And honestly, I found myself not really going into Megiddo as much anymore. In fact, I just relied on Obadiah turns, I relied on Bat Bounty turns, and even, if you didn't have to stride, really, you can do a regular Nightrose turn, and you can do a 4 Skull Dragon attack, or mix in some Ghost Ships in that to get advantages too at the same time. So really, you have a lot of more options. They kind of falling back onto the Wiccan. And honestly, I found myself where if we can get at least 2 Skull Dragons, the Bat Bounty turns, the Obadiah turns are fully live. So with that, I kind of wanted to make more room for the other cards to actually make more use of the support. So I decided to drop down the Skull Dragon to 3. And honestly, it's been working out that way. It's almost the same philosophy now in Standard, where because of Shirane, because it gets bind cards, and of course Norakami coming back in the meta as well, or becoming a prevalent thing, you don't have to worry about being a Skull Dragon binded, because before they played 2 in Standard, but they bumped it up to 3. So it kind of follows that same philosophy, where 3 is just like enough, and you get to see it enough, and then of course, when you pay the cost of stride, you could just ditch it at that point. In this video, I just wanted to take some moment to appreciate the SPs. So I figured I'd show it off to the, the viewers, if you guys are curious what it looks like too. It's kind of hard to see the actual, there you go, the lighting bouncing effect, so it's really shiny. It's a beautiful card when it's SP, so it's definitely well worth it. I was seeking this out, so I thought I'd show this off at a closer view so you guys can actually get to see it and appreciate it a little bit too as well. Onto the grade 2s. We are playing 10 grade 2s. We're playing 4 Columbar, 4 Greed Shade, 1 King Serpent, and 1 Ghost Ship over here. So with Columbar, obviously, it's one of the key cards from the new set that's actually the backbone of the deck now, especially for most generic Granblue decks. On place, Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, Counterblast 1, search your deck, mill something of choice and revive anything of choice at that point too. It's a hard once per turn, so it's really solid. Making sure you have your key pieces and extending attacks as well, and then building up a field. So very flexible card. Great first grade 2 turn with the Ghost Ship as well. You can even do the King Serpent if you really want to get the counter charge. Or fetch other pieces, where honestly Ghost Ship is that 24k beater that lets us draw at the end, and then of course if Nightrose is on board, it becomes a 29k beater, so it's even better at that point. Obadiah will give it a plus 5k, so again a 29k beater, so that lets you draw a card, and you want to abuse Ghost Ship as possible. I've considered even going to a second one. Honestly, there's a lot there's only so much room at this point, and so feel free to tweak that ratio if you want to. And then the King Serpent is there just to really countercharge at that point. And then finishing off with Greed Shade. Greed Shade is amazing. I wish I had SPs back then. I should have picked them up in the investment. But it's okay. But Greed Shade's a great card. You know, when in place, you can discard mill top 2, get anything that's not a Greed Shade, and add it to your hand. And so with that, you can get your heal triggers, you copy of the Vanguard, and so on, and really fix your quality of your hand at that point. But the biggest thing that honestly that appreciates Greed Shade in this deck build is that if we do go grade 3 first, do our turn, we want to make sure we have that actual heal trigger so we can G-guard, and so that way when it's our strike turn, we already have a card face up on the G zone, so we can, if we stride Obadiah, then we can actually call full board. And actually, because if we milled a lot with Navigator, we have a decent enough drop zone, and then of course Skull Dragons are there, and we can make a very solid Obadiah turn with aggressiveness from the Skull Dragons as well with the multi-attack. So yeah. Now it's Columbard's turn. So as you can see, it's a very shiny card. Very nice. I was so happy to actually look for these guys because the art for Columbard is amazing already. And so only seeing it at SP with the shininess just makes it a very good art to look at, especially when playing and everything. It's just very crisp, very subtle, but at the same time it has that popping effect. Onto the grade ones. We are playing 14 grade ones. We're playing 4 Navigator, 3 of Negrabone V, 1 of Negrabone G, 1 Fatal Shade, 2 Rebel Banshee, and 3 Dancing Cutlass. So with this lineup, again, this is really the bread and butter of the part of the deck where we have the Navigators, where we can just rest 2 rear guards, mill the top 5, start building up the drop zone. Again, those numbers of 5, 10 actually mattered because of Negrabone V, for example, where you can discard a card if it's in the drop zone. You can bottom deck this as well, and then call grade 1 from the drop zone to rearguard circle, and then if you have 10 or more, that's when you can call anything. Skull Dragons, Ghost Ships, you name it, right? And so we have also Dancing Cutlass over here, the V version, so we can actually countercharge. We want to make sure we're not restricted at that point, and really Dancing Cutlass is the on-demand countercharge at that point, alongside with King Serpent. And honestly, if I were to choose, I guess I can go the route with 4 Dancing Cutlass and take out King Serpent, but there's only so many grade 2s, so I want to make sure I had enough grade 2s to be able to ride consistently at that point and depend on as well. Rebel Banshee is there for the draw advantage as well, because we wanted to make room for cards like Fatal Shade and Negrabone G. She got down to 2 at that point, but it feels like it's enough, especially if you can grab with Obadiah and you really need it at that point. We have access to Fatal Shade and Negrabone G thanks to the Nightrose name, like I said. Fatal Shade is basically GB1. It's a hollow unit as well. At the end of the turn when it dies to hollow, you can bottom deck this card and actually call a non-grade 1 from your drop zone and call it a rearguard circle. And that really allows you to call, you know, cards like Greed Shade so you can fix your hand. You can call King Serpent to get a counter charge. You can call the Granblue G Era to a counter charge as well. So this can be a better booster, or it allows you to actually have access to countercharging to 4. So if you had the Grenache already on board alongside with Fatal Shade, Grenache would die, countercharge 2. This would die, bring it back, hollow Grenache, countercharge 2 more, so you countercharge 4. So you have access to that massive countercharge if you really need it, especially for certain matchups. So that's really well appreciated. And honestly, it's just a really good solid card. And so with that flexibility, you can really set up your hand where Greed Shade can improve the quality of your hand. Not only that, but it could also help you with ultimate stride on that first stride turn if you really want to go that way. But really it's just a, you know, really fix your hand, have that utility, and so Fatal Shade is really appreciated at that point. Not only that, it's a hollow unit, so it kind of helps with the Negrabone G, but you're not going to call Fatal Shade from Negrabone G, you're really going to call Nightstrom pretty much 99% of the time at that point. With Negrabone G, again, GB1, at the end of the battle, pop the unit that it boosted, and then you can call a hollow unit from the drop zone and call it a rearguard at that point. And so this is really cool. So if your attack got Denial Griffin or it got interrupted, as long as it's still on the field and it boosted, you can still do the skill. The cost is Counterblast 1, and you do as much as you can of the effect. And so the retire part is actually in the effect, so you just do as much as you can, but if the unit's no longer there, as long as you boosted, you just need a Counterblast 1, and boom, call Hollow Unit at that point, so you can chain attack with Nightstorm into whatever Skull Dragon, Ghost Ship, or even Greed Shade at that point if you really need to. Or you can go into the Nightstorm into a Column Bard to get a Skull Dragon to keep extending the attacks at that point too as well. And so we just need one. Also with Nightrose V's retirement, this can kill itself with it, and then just reuse it, as you can do multi-attack patterns with once you actually have a Vanguard that is just Nightrose V. So that comes up in the Bat Bounty turn. So with that, let's go into the next lineup. Onto the grade zeros. We are playing 18 grade zeros, so we're playing both of the Grenaches. We are playing 12 crits with 2 PG draws, 2 of them being the crit sentinel we hear, and then of course the 4 heals. So the trigger lineup hasn't really changed much, except for the Chad the Ghosty being able to stride. We are playing Rough Seas Banshee just because it's a unit that we can just call, rest with Navigator, and then put it into soul, draw a card, so it's not as hurtful in the early game. Not only that, it just helps build up soul where you may need it at that point, so it's a really nice card. Especially if you're already attacking with high numbers with Skull Dragon, that 5k usually doesn't matter. It may come up once in a while, but it doesn't matter as much. So if you don't like that 5k power, you can use the vanilla triggers, or you can use the triggers that go into Soul as well. But I like just having Rough Seas Banshee, where you can just call it early game, use it as a booster if you need to, or rest it with Navigator, and just has more of that utility base as well. And you can use it even before Stride, or if you decide not to Stride as well. So you're not locked out of GB1 basically at that point. And so with the Grenaches, obviously we have our starter, we have the Granblue Quick Ticket Shield, and then the Grenache from G Era. That's, like I said, it allows us to countercharge 2 on a consistent basis, and then we have that Fatal Shade play where we could just countercharge 4 at that point. Now we could see Grenache, dude. This card I was very much looking forward to have, because he's the starter and he actually has really good R2, and just making it shiny just really pops it out, and it just this is awesome. That's all I gotta say at that point. Now with the Quick Ticket Shield, I wasn't as impressed. It seems that the newer ones aren't as shiny. As you can see, there's barely any shininess to where the symbol is. The prior ones that came out like originally are very shiny, and I was hoping for that, but I'm kind of disappointed that they stopped doing that. So if you're thinking about getting a shiny clan ticket shield, just be mindful of that. So it's kind of a bummer, but still, I have it, and it's really nice just to have it. The Granblue symbol is always a good one, and also the Aqua Force one too. Onto the Stride zone. We're playing 11 strides. Pretty much the bread and butter is Bat Bounty and a big Obadiah. Bat Bounty lets you do the rewrite during the battle phase. Counterblast 1, discard 3. Choose a grade 3 from the drop zone, write it to stand. That way you can actually get another protect marker with Nightrose. You still have the Nightrose name, so it's really good at that point. Of course, Obadiah is just basically Counterblast 1, mill up to 5 cards of your choosing. Especially if you didn't have the Navigator that got all the pieces, this kind of helps you finish it up, so your drop zone is really good quality. And then of course you can get to call 2 cards for every face-up card in the G zone, and they get plus 5k. So that's why I was talking about where if you went first, you G-guard, you can call 4. Very impactful turn at that point, especially if you have a drop zone that's already set up at that point too. Navigators is back in here, honestly, because of Chaos being revealed. We don't even know if Locke is coming back fully with the retrain of Chaos, so I just kind of like thought of Navigators immediately. I'm like, man, if we only have one circle available, then Navigators kind of takes advantage of that. So I figured I'd pop him. The Cyclones weren't really doing much, since the only vanillas that we had were like the actual heal triggers, and it never like really came up. So at this point, I just wanted to have the utility with Navigators at that point. And then we have Twilight, Nightrose over here. It's really for the Nubatama matchup if you want to clean your field up, or any other cards that you know, you don't want to leave a board essentially, because Obadiah will cost something, or a lot of cards, but they don't retire. And so cards like boosters, like Granblue G, which typically you want them to stay, but certain matchups you don't want them to stay. So at that point, let Twilight Nightrose take care of that, and then of course you can get a crit, you can get some power there, depending on how many Nightroses you have in the drop zone. So it may come up. We have Galleon, GBA, call everything. Basically, they get 10k for free once you have GBA. And then we have the Megiddo Ballerina package. Again, Megiddo doesn't really come up as much, and then Ballerina doesn't come up as much, but if you're Counterblast tonight, that's one stride to go into very early on. And then of course we have just Ultimate Stride in case we get Drachma. Lastly, the G-Guards. So we are playing 5 G-Guards. I couldn't find my Deep Corpse, but I wanted to play 1 Negro Mode and 1 Deep Quartz. I haven't played that card in a long time. And the reason for Deep Corpse Dragon is because it lets you mill 2. So in case you need the extra mills to really kind of dig deeper a little bit in your first stride turn, that actually could come up, since you're building up with the Navigators at that point, and you're digging for Skull Dragons, and you're digging for combo pieces. We, of course, have the 2 Negronora because it's the biggest shield in the game, pretty much, that we have access to. Is really nice. So we could just G-Guard and guard pretty much every attack in the game at that point without actually discarding another card at that point. And of course, you can PG with her method too as well. You'd just be discarding a card at that point. Rack Tome, discard and draw, helps build up the drop zone again, and also improve the quality of your hand potentially, and improving the quality of your drop zone at that point. So onto the combo part of the video. Like I was talking about, if you're going first, this is your grade 3 turn. Kind of going into it, you use a counterblast on your grade 2 turn with Column to gain the Ghost Ship. You probably took some damage depending on the matchup at that point. So point is, if you have 2 damage available or 1, you can still do this turn. And of course, you have access to like Ghost Ship because of Column, so you can revive it with a Necrobone V at that point. You have a Greed Shade, so that way you can actually get a piece that you want. You can get the heal trigger at that point, so you can G guard. We have a Navigator that's just been kind of chilling since he was played down. So your drop zone should be at least 10 cards at that point. So I just wanted to show this off, kind of going into that first stride at that point as well. So your first attack can be either the Ghost Ship or the Greed Shade. You can attack with the Ghost Ship first, so that way it's 29k, retire and draw itself, and then of course you have the Greed Shade over here boosted with Navigator. This is going to be, let's see, 9 plus 7, 16 plus 15, 31. So it dies. Then of course, Nightrose attack, Counterblast 1. And then of course, Column, Counterblast 1. And then boom, you have your 2 Skull Dragons to follow up with. You use Twin Drive, distribute the triggers, and then both Skull Dragons can attack. They die, and so your field will look like this by the end of the turn. So with this, you should have a heal trigger thanks to Greed Shade. You have a decent drop zone setup with some of the key cards. You have build enough hand to survive, and because you're a protect deck, you have the protect marker as well. So your hand is pretty good at that point too. So let's go into the next part. Now into the next part. Now, like I said, then your opponent will take the first strike, go after you. You defend yourself, you G-guard, and you're set up with the Obadiah. And so you may be at 5 damage at this point, and you only have 2 counterblasts. If you have 2 Cutlass already, you can bind 1 and then call one of them, so that way you can actually countercharge 1. Allows you to have a 3rd counterblast at that point. So that way, you're at a better position. Then of course with Necrobone Vs, not Necrobone Vs, because of Obadiah, you can call up to 4 at this point. So you counterblast 1, because you have another card face up, you can call 4. So your key 4 pieces are going to be these guys. So during your battle phase, you're going to attack with this Skull Dragon first. This dies. Then you're going to attack boosted with this. And at this point, you should have around 15 cards in drop zones. This is a decent number size. And then you're going to pop and call the Nightstorm, because it's a hollow unit again. And with 7 plus 11 is 18. Fatal Shake at the plus 5, so this actually becomes a 23k column at that point. So it actually makes really good numbers too. So if they got a trigger and it's a 4 stack, it still hits. So then you got the Nightstorm, counterblasting 1 to call Skull Dragon once more. And then if you want, you can attack with the Vanguard at that point. It really just depends on what damage that they are. So if you want to put triggers on the Nightstorm instead, that works. And then of course Skull Dragon as the finisher, and then it retires. So at the end of the turn, then this dies to hollow, this dies to hollow, and then of course if you bring the Grenache, you can counter charge 2 and bottom decks, and at that point you have a decent setup. So if they live, then you have 2 counterblasts to work with as well, and then kind of go from there as well. And that's the deck profile, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I honestly had a lot of fun with this, especially just with the new cards in general, and then mixing some of the old support from G Era and really just kind of coming up with this build. Feel free to tweak it to your liking. Honestly, it may depend on your metagame that some cards may not be appropriate as much, so go from there. I just wanted to show both Navigator and G Era support for Nightrose can really go together and actually mesh pretty well. And of course, there's a lot more into it because it's Granblue. It's a very in-depth clan at that point. And again, it's awesome to see the real cards too. I always like doing the deck profiles with real cards, but proxies work. But with this also we have SP, so I hope you guys got a chance to actually see the cards too and appreciate them too. It's really well done, to be honest. I really like this art of Nightrose too, so it really worked out at that point. So thanks for watching again, and if you guys want to learn more in depth about the Navigator, check out the Nightrose Navigator standard deck profile. I go in depth how Navigator really goes even helpful at that deck. And then of course, if you want to see that pure premium build, you could always check that out too as well. So thanks again, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.